TCU needed a win against Baylor badly. And if it's one thing we learned in that victory, is that the Horned Frogs still got their mojo. Oh, yeah, it's locked on Horned Frogs. Play my music.
You are Locked On Horned Frogs, your daily podcast on the TCU Horned Frogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, family? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Horned Frogs podcast, your number one everyday shop for everything TCU athletics, Monday through Friday. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And every day is, remember, just because the mic cuts off does not mean that the journey is over. Just means it's time to follow me on Twitter at South Exclusives. Starts with an S, ends with an S. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. And it's Wednesday, so you know I'm not alone. It's not just me. It's not just Darrion Gray, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South. We also have Sarah Smith from KCE in every single Wednesday, going through a variety of topics. Of course, we close out with our Big 12 winners and losers. In segment 2, we'll have Sarah's stat of the week. But this whole thing kicks off with the revolving door topic this week. It is the biggest takeaway from Baylor versus TCU. Now, if everybody remembers correctly, Sarah's a tad bit sad because her Baylor Bears did not come out with the victory from last week. She was advocating for her new work spot as opposed to where she went to school. But it's okay. The fight for Sarah's loyalty went to the Horned Frogs. So I think she's still a little bit happy this year. But how you doing today?
You know, I'm glad they came out with the win because I was actually there in a trash bag with a hole in it so that I could see during the torrential downpour that occurred during the game. So I'm doing great now that I'm indoors and dry and it's nice out. Yeah, that was an insane game. Yeah. You know, our meteorologist at our station said it was going to rain, but that is not what I expected.
Were you there in a professional capacity or there as an alum going back for homecoming?
Oh, I was there as a fan, but obviously I actually took a couple notes on my phone during the game to talk about during this week's episode. So a little work, a little fan, you know.
That's dedication. All right, y'all don't understand. That's dedication. Y'all ain't never been to a game and took notes on your phone. All right, I've been there. She's been there. She's still doing it. All right, look, TCU, Baylor. This was a big-time game for TCU. I think it was a game that you absolutely had to win. It was a must-win game for a multitude of reasons. But what was your biggest takeaway from this game? I'll give mine first, actually, because we're going to get into it a little bit more in depth in segment 2. But it was just the ability to run the football. And I know you may say that Baylor doesn't have this type of run defense. So why is that such a huge takeaway? You should be able to run the football against a team like Baylor, who I believe was 13th in the conference coming into the game. The problem is Colorado isn't that good against the run either, and you couldn't run the ball against them. So I'm a huge believer of adjusting my expectations, adjusting my bar, understanding where we sit. That's not a 100% situation, but in most cases, I'm okay with that because as the season goes on, you have different expectations. They needed to prove that they could run the ball against anybody because they struggled against one of the worst run defenses in the conference in Colorado. You just needed to show that you could do it one time. And I thought they did it a little bit against Kansas State, but you didn't have an opportunity to run the ball all game long against the Wildcats. This time you did, and I thought you took advantage of it, especially in the weather. That was probably something that was beneficial, less throwing the ball when you have all of these rain delays, all of this raining. You know, I think that, or lightning delays and all of this raining, I think that it was probably good strategy as well. But you have to be able to do it successfully in order to put it into effect. So that was probably my biggest takeaway, is that TCU can finally run the football again.
Yeah, and that kind of leads right into mine, which is kind of a question that I had kind of looming over this game is, you know, we have seen what TCU can do when the pass game and the run game are both locked in. And so we haven't seen that. So the question that I had entering the game, does TCU still got it. And they do. We saw, despite the weather and whatnot, we saw what this team can be when everything is clicking. And, Sawyer Robinson had some incredible plays against their TCU's defense. And I still think that TCU's defense played incredible. So we got the run game going, which obviously takes less pressure off of Josh Hoover, which also leads to less mistakes like we saw from him. So it was an overall impressive win for me from the Frogs. And I actually was at this game, kind of like I said, and I ended up leaving because of the 4 weather delays. It was crazy. But the end of the game was actually cut off of ESPN, so I didn't get to see it. But I did see the score and was like, what happened? So obviously I go to ESPN and look at that play-by-play, and I kind of see the last series of events where we give up that fumble return for a touchdown, and Baylor is creeping within 1 score of TCU, but that final interception of the Horned Frogs defense does seal it for him. That may be concerning to some fans, but I actually walked away from that sort of positive. TCU played so well kind of leading up to that moment. It created a cushion that accounted for a Baylor comeback, because we know that Baylor's offense is really talented, so don't count them out even when they're down. So,
and you say you walked away positive. What did you think about, of course, the cushion aspect? We talked about this on Monday's episode, I believe this was Monday's episode, in which I spoke about how there was a little bit of encouragement that can be taken if you're looking at a silver lining. You definitely don't want to let a game that you had in control get close, but there's a silver lining, a bit of encouraging aspect to it, that when all the chips were against you and it felt like you lost all of your momentum, that the defense was able to make a stop. What do you take in from how TCU either responded, or just the fact that they gave up that lead in the first place? Like, is this a situation that's overly concerning to you?
I don't think it's concerning, just given like the circumstances of how the second half went with all of the weather delays. I know obviously we can't be like, oh, what would have happened if this didn't happen? But I also think having 4 weather delays back to back is such a momentum killer. Because you have to go inside, wait, come back out, warm up, play a snap, go back inside, come out, go back inside, come out. So it really is not that concerning to me, just given the circumstances. I think it would have looked a lot different if those weather delays did not happen, because going into the second half, TCU had a lot of momentum, and that kind of start stop kind of just killed it on both sides.
And one of the things we talked about after the game, once all of I think it took about 5-6 hours. I really think that it ended up being maybe just a little less than 6 hours in total time from the moment it started to when it was all finished. But after all of that, you had Sonny Dykes come out and he had his rant about how this team is the winningest team in the Big 12 since he's taken over, and this team knows how to win. 2-part question for you. A, how did you feel about that rant? And then also today or Tuesday, he came and said that basically that was for his team. That was in defense of the players. I don't necessarily buy it. I'll be honest with you. I think it was in defense of himself, but I'll let you give your 2 cents on that.
I don't think it's in defense of himself at all. I liked his rant because it's not like he only spieled about the positives of what TCU football was able to do. He also brought in what they need to work on and those mistakes. So I liked his rant because I feel like the fans are so quick to jump on him about, the status of his seat, just kind of like what we talked about last week with, how hot is his seat? And, mind you, I am a Buffalo now.
Okay.
Just clocking that from last week. I did say if TCU won this game, I would move back down there. So just throwing it out there. But back to your question, I do think it's in defense of his players. And I liked that he is kind of willing to publicly defend TCU in that way, just because people are so quick to assume. So I would rather have that than Sonny Dykes say nothing at all.
I'll say this. I did like the rant. I supported it. Do I feel like it was in defense of his players? No, I really don't. Mostly because I didn't hear the players getting slandered. I didn't hear the need to defend players. I heard the team in general being criticized for losing a game. Yes, 100%. But I heard more about Dykes in his job security than I heard about maybe they don't have the talent out there. I actually heard more people say that he was wasting talent out there. And I don't know. I didn't feel like the teachers, not the teachers, but I didn't feel like the players were under attack at all. I didn't feel like they needed any defending. And I also felt like all those players weren't there for 3.5 years. All those players aren't there from the very jump. There are some critical players who are there. There's probably enough key players for you for like the core. But in my opinion, Dykes was the one who was under attack. Dykes was the one where he says, we've been the winningest team for the last 3.5 years, just so you know that.
That part I was kind of like, I think you're getting a little emotional with it whenever he was saying that. But kind of the messages outside of that little chunk.
Yeah. And I think
I really liked.
That's the chunk that caught me.
Yeah.
We're the winningest team. We know how to win. And of course, I think sometimes when you talk about coaches defending themselves, it has a negative connotation. Well, I'm going to erase all connotation to make things clear. I fully support, like Sarah believes that he was defending the players, and she is in her right to feel that way. It's what Dyke said. I feel like he was defending himself. I think that he may not want to come out and say that because it may come off as emotional. Well, guess what? I'm a tad bit of an emotional guy myself. I don't mind the emotion. I don't mind the ferocity in his speech. And quite frankly, I like the fact that he came in and beat his chest a little bit. I think that everybody is entitled to feel how they want to feel about his tenure. I don't think that it clears up everything. But if you're Sonny Dykes, come out and advocate for yourself. And I was a fan of it. I know a lot of people may not be a fan of what I say about it, in the sense that I just think defending yourself as a head coach has a negative connotation. And I don't think that it should. So when I say he was defending himself, it may seem like I'm passing judgment, but I'm genuinely not, because it's not that I criticize,
you should want to defend yourself, because people online are so quick to come at you, and you can ignore it, but I know that they probably see that. So if I were a player, I would want that as a head coach to be like, hey, here's me addressing what you're saying. I'm going to defend myself in this moment. So
100%. And just on last thoughts on that, maybe I didn't see all of the slander around the players. That's very well could be the case. Let's put that out there too. I don't see everything that's tweeted out. My timeline and the things I saw were pretty much going towards the head coach, but maybe the things that he saw, maybe the things that were sent to him were going towards the players. So that is very well a possible explanation on why he and I don't align in what we saw. I'll say that. So let's move forward. Let's push forward and get into Sarah's stat of the week. And as I've already kind of teased, it's leaning towards the running game, but I'll get into specifics as we continue with Locked On Horned Frogs. Today's episode is brought to you by Mazda, and Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than just simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride, with more IIHS Top Safety Pick Plus awards than anyone else. Now, of course, we all believe in safety. We all believe in getting to point A and point B. We all want to do that, of course, but most of us don't just want to get from point A to point B. We want to get there in style. We want to get there and enjoy ourselves, and most importantly, in comfort. And you can get all of that when you feel the Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from the metallic accents to the available Napa leather upholstery. Oof, it's a ride that honestly is going to have you wishing that you never got to your next destination, so you could just keep riding forever. Like our players, we sweat every detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. Today's episode is also brought to you by Peloton. And Peloton is shaping the future of fitness with the brand new Peloton Cross Training Tread Plus, powered by Peloton IQ. It's their most advanced equipment yet, designed to give you real-time guidance and endless ways to move, whether you're running, lifting, or cross-training with your favorite instructors. This is training reimagined. Peloton is built for breakthroughs with tools that help you plan and stay motivated and reach peak Performance. I love how the Peloton IQ system offers real-time strength coaching, and it tracks my reps and it tracks my form to make sure that I'm staying disciplined and I'm not going to injure myself. So let yourself run, lift, flex, and push forward. Explore the new Peloton cross-training tread plus today at onepeloton.com. As we continue rolling on today's episode of Locked On Horned Frogs, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day. For your second listen, check out the Locked On Big 12 show, Locked On West Virginia, to try to get a little bit more information on the enemy, and then the Locked On Big 12 show, because that'll be coming out on Thursday. I always forget which day it is because I don't upload it, but it does get uploaded. So you can catch it on the Locked On the Horned Frog stream. All right. Are you right? All right. Now, we're going with the stat of the week, and we don't have any music, but Sarah, we do have a new graphic for your stat of the week. Ta-da!
I love it.
There we go. So what is your stat of the week? So then we can take this down and we can go back to us.
All right. As you can clearly see on this lovely graphic, TCU totaled 196 rushing yards in their matchup against Baylor. And this is exactly what I wanted to see out of TCU's running game. I was so happy to see our running game look as good as it did, because like I was just talking about, this shows that TCU still got it. And it's unfortunate that this rushing performance out of TCU isn't as consistent as it should be, because TCU would be a team that is talked about as highly as Texas Tech, as Utah, as BYU for the Big 12 if it was consistent, because this performance was exactly showcased what TCU is capable of in a big game, when Josh Hoover's passing game and the running game are locked in. Because now that the run game has some success, that takes a lot of pressure off of Josh Hoover. And we saw last week with the 3 interceptions what that looks like when you depend on him to move the ball in every aspect. So now we take some of that pressure off, and TCU's offense looks incredibly elite. So I'm hoping that they can use this big win against Baylor as momentum to carry out the rest of the season and secure a big-time bowl game and make a statement for next season.
Yeah, I think they have a lot of talent in this room. That's the part that I think has a lot of people frustrated, is they like Trent Battle. They like Ivorian Barnes. They like Jeremy Payne. Like, I think that fans really like this room and expect better. That mixed with the fact that TCU has struggled to run the ball for years. So the constant issues mixed with the talent that's in the room has made it a really irritating problem for the Frogs. But this week they got it done. And I was looking up where the teams ranked. And this is why it's impressive. I mentioned this earlier, but let's get some stats to back it up as we sit here right now. So this isn't when TCU played them. This is current stats. Baylor is 14th in the conference out of 16. Colorado is 15th. All right. So they didn't run the ball well against Colorado. Kansas State is 11th. They didn't run the ball well against Kansas State, only because of the how the game went. So I thought that this momentum began last week, and then it carried over into this week. Well, guess what? This week against West Virginia, you're going against the 12th ranked defense in the conference. So you're going against some teams that allow rushing yards. TCU is at the bottom of the league when it comes to offensive rushing yards. Now, they are number 2 when it comes to passing yards, but that's the story of where this team lies with how they run their offense. I think that the offense can be way more effective, or would be way more effective, if they lean into the run a little bit more. And I think that Saturday was a great showcase of that.
Yeah, exactly. And moving into this West Virginia game, it'll be really telling if TCU can carry that momentum into a defense that does allow a lot of rushing yards, because even with that Kaborian Barnes, even last season, the running back room was still incredibly talented. And Jeremy, I believe it was Jeremy Payne's freshman season, and you could even see him break out, and you can see the talent that will come from him from years to come. So that's what I'm hoping for, is that they can see that they can do it. They can use that positive momentum to really lock it in for the rest of the season. And just something that I just kind of would like to touch on at the also is that this is what happens when TCU gets a good run game. They win games.
Mm-hmm.
They win games. And the Big 12 is super competitive, and you need to be able to lock that in to be competitive, because that's always the story game, like week 1 is, oh, TCU's going to make it to the Big 12 championship because our run game's improved, blah, 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 and then it just all falls apart. And then, like, quite literally around this time is when it all kind of comes together again, and they win out with everything going their way. So
as we continue with today's episode of Locked On Horned Frogs, let's expand our conversation to the entire conference. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app today, and maybe you get to go to the next TCU game. You want to travel out to West Virginia, go ahead and hang out with my guy Mountaineer Paul. You can do that. Maybe you want to wait till the Frogs come back home and they play Iowa State, a game that looked like it had huge ramifications. And honestly, I think it still may as this Big 12 plays out. I'm just saying, don't give up on it yet. Or maybe I just seen an advertisement for the Mavericks versus the Spurs, and it's in the AAC tonight. It's on ESPN. I'm sure that's the debut of Cooper Flagg. Doesn't matter if you want to go pro, you want to go collegiate, you want to go ballet, you want to go theater. You can get it all on Game Time. So really, what are you waiting for? Download Game Time today. Get $20 off your first purchase. As we're wrapping up today's episode of Locked On Horned Frogs, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day. Every day, making it all the way to segment 3, and I thank you 2 times for that. Thank you. Thank you. We have winners and losers from the Big 12 this week, and I'll start off with Sarah. Who is your biggest winner?
My winner of this week is a team that hasn't really been talked about at all nationally, but they're one of the few teams that remain undefeated across Division I football. That's BYU.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're 2 ranked big wins, which against Arizona State and most recently against Utah were close, but this team is still finding ways to win and remain undefeated. Or sorry, one of their losses was against Colorado, not Arizona State. Excuse me. This team is still finding ways to win against teams that are talented and can win in the Big 12. And I'm just confused why this is not being talked about. I'm so confused why this is not being talked about. They beat Utah. They beat Utah, and Utah had more rushing and receiving yards than the team. But this BYU defense is still making plays and finding ways to help this offense win football games. And so I'm here trying to put some respect on the BYU Cougars name right now, because there's the one team in the Big 12 that's still undefeated.
Yeah, so I think BYU is really fascinating. They've been one of the more interesting teams to follow. You're right. They don't get a lot of discussion. And I think that's because Texas Tech had been around. I think that's because for weeks it looked like Texas Tech was going to be the team in this conference. When they knocked off Utah, because there's been a revolving door of who everybody expects to be the best team in the Big 12. Yeah. And this is, in my opinion, BYU's time. They're 11th in the country. I think that most people will probably begin to say that they're the best team. It was Arizona State at one point. Then it was Iowa State. Then it was Utah. Then it was Texas Tech. And it felt like those teams just kind of kept changing around. BYU has climbed from being an undefeated, or excuse me, an unranked team to being a near top 10 team. They're 11 in the coaches poll, and then they are in the AP poll, excuse me, and then they're top 10 in the coaches poll. So they're beginning to get a little bit of respect. They just climbed up. They were top 15 a week ago. So I think you're seeing this team steadily climb. My biggest winner, and this is a little bit of a cheat, but it's everybody at the top of the Big 12, because you have BYU undefeated. You got Cincinnati undefeated. One of those O's is going to have to go in, I think, about 3 weeks. I think they play each other in about 2 or 3 weeks, 2 or 3 games. Let's get that exact. But this is 2 undefeated teams on one game. They got Iowa State today, or this week. They have Texas Tech. Then they have TCU. Then they have Cincinnati. At some point, they're going to face off, and they can't go undefeated. But you saw Texas Tech lose. You saw Texas Tech lose this game this weekend, and that made everybody who had one loss a bigger winner. Cincinnati and BYU having no losses probably make them the supreme winner.
Yeah.
But you have a team like UH, 1 loss. You have Texas Tech, 1 loss. You have Arizona State, who knocked off Texas Tech, 1 loss. Everybody, it feels like it's open now. It's open because either Cincinnati or BYU is going to lose. We know that for a fact. At best, the Big 12 will have 1 undefeated team, at best, because the 2 undefeated teams play each other. So that means if I'm a 1-loss team, especially if it becomes a logjam of sorts, Arizona State looking a little bit better now. Arizona State feels like they're in my opinion, a bit of a better situation. I know that last week they lost to Utah. That kind of stings. But guess what? Utah has 2 losses. Lost to Texas Tech. So it's a difficult one. Go ahead, Sarah.
Yeah, Arizona State was also without Sam Leavitt against Utah. And with Sam Leavitt, we saw what this team can do. And they knocked off Texas Tech, and they're actually my loser. Mm-hmm. I know that I've been preaching the gospel about Texas Tech on this podcast and in a different podcast that I'm on here at my station, but I just wasn't really I wasn't impressed with them. And we have seen that they can win with their backup Will Hammond, as they did win against Utah. Devin Morton is still day today, so right now, the future of Texas Tech, can they still find a way to the Big 12 championship? Or are they kind of going to crumble with this loss of momentum that they're finding? I'm not really sure, but this, in my opinion, this kind of was a must-win game for them. Arizona State is a great team, and we've seen that Will Hammond can fill those shoes. But it just wasn't in the cards for them today.
Yeah, no, I think to point out this, Texas Tech has Oklahoma State, Kansas State, BYU, Central Florida, and West Virginia left. Not necessarily a murderer's row. Now that BYU game is going to be tough. BYU is at home though. Texas Tech will be the home team in that game. So they have that BYU game at home.
But no more tortillas. So are they really going to have that momentum?
We'll see. That's going to be the fascinating thing is now you don't control your own dynasty, your own destiny, excuse me, because you got teams. There's some talent. I think Kansas State is talented, but you probably win that. BYU is the one. BYU is the game that now you have to win. And you kind of still have to hope things work out for you, because if you're a 1-loss team, if you win out, that probably means that BYU is at least 1 loss. But let's say that Cincinnati runs the table. And then let's say Cincinnati runs the table from this way on. We have Texas Tech who runs the table from this way on. And so does Arizona State. It doesn't matter because Arizona State is going to be the team that has the tiebreaker. That's really tough. You lose a lot of your control as far as Texas Tech goes. And my last team is going to be West Virginia. In a battle between 2 teams that could be argued as the worst in the conference, West Virginia lost. I actually don't think that there's too much to say here. West Virginia had no wins within the conference. Central Florida had no wins from within the conference, and now one team does. Oklahoma State is there, so I think they're another team that's in the conversation. I'd probably put Oklahoma State as the worst team, and have West Virginia and Central Florida fighting it out for that second to worst spot, to be honest. But the point is, two teams who didn't have a win on the season, didn't have a win in conference play on the season. They played each other and lost. One lost.
And it's not like it was close either. I think West Virginia might have gotten lost on their country roads.
Hey, now. I can't disagree. All right, Mountaineer Paul, don't come at us now. But you'll see Mountaineer Paul tomorrow, by the way, everybody. In case you're unfamiliar, crossover tomorrow with the host of Locked On West Virginia. But yeah, no, it was a 45-13 stomping. It was bad. It was ugly. When two undefeated teams play each other and one gets bulldozed, I think it's clear who the biggest loser of the week can be if it's not going to be Texas Tech, who lost control of their destiny. These are two obvious choices. I usually try to come in and, add a little difference in there, but not today. It's West Virginia. It's Texas Tech. All right. Shout out to everybody at the top of the Big 12, though, because you're up in about a couple of hours. I can't wait to talk about this on Locked On Big 12 Squad Show. So in the meantime, in between time, until the next time that we hear each other, family, and it'll be her and I on Wednesday next week, same time. So get used to it. In the meantime, in between time, until the next time we hear each other, family, take care. Stay blessed. Peace.